Hello, and welcome to this video where, amongst other things, you will see how focusing on audience and context will help you to analyze a play. So this is a literature style essay in which the student analyzes an extract and then they try to apply it to elsewhere in the play. Your two choices are to analyze the extract first and then the rest of the play second, but I think it's much more useful to analyze a bit of the extract and to apply it to elsewhere in the play where useful. We're going to read out most of this essay, I imagine, because for literature, we need to see the flow of the argument as well. So, Romeo and Juliet's love is presented in this soliloquy from Romeo to be unconditional and untiring. So although I've not mentioned the question explicitly, we can see that the question is going to be related to how is their love presented. And this is a useful idea. Upon seeing the love of his life dead, Romeo settles to take his own life. When describing the corpse of Juliet, Romeo questions, "Why art thou so fair?" The use of this rhetorical question, so you have some technique being mentioned there, has the effect of pure agony to the audience, as he questions why she is still so beautiful even in death. We need to be clear about why it's agony, because they know that Juliet is still alive. The love Romeo bears has no barrier, that is death. He still views her as if she is alive. The word, adjective, fair, may also resonate with the audience as desperate love, as Romeo does not use the words such as beautiful or gorgeous, as he sees what he thinks to be her final resting place. He uses fair, which makes the audience think of rules and balance. That suggests how little Romeo believes Juliet has changed. And again, that's an interesting connotation that the student is applying to the essay. Her balance of beauty is consistent and everlasting, which parallels the love Shakespeare presents. And that's interesting. I think here you could even say that it contrasts the types of love that Shakespeare represents, as Shakespeare is famed for presenting human beings as being complex and contradictory. The student then develops these ideas. Similarly, in this soliloquy, Romeo's love for Juliet is presented as fateful and meant to be. So here we have another clear variable or idea. The tragedy and love of the two protagonists is written in the stars, and this is recognized by Romeo when he says, "Shake the yoke of inauspicious stars." So again, we're seeing now some analysis of this variable as it occurs elsewhere in the play. Oh no, this actually occurs in the extract itself, and it is this prologue reference that occurs later on in the play. So during the Elizabethan zeitgeist means spirit of the time, fate horoscopes and all manners of prediction of future were strongly believed in. Shakespeare uses this view throughout the play, and the audience learn at the beginning of the prologue that the star-crossed lovers take their life. The audience, especially during the Elizabethan era, may not see the process of dying for another as the character's hamartia. Hamartia in this case meaning their fatal flaw, but as the fate that has been foretold and sealed in the heavens, making it inevitable. That's interesting because hamartia is, by its definition, a fatal flaw that leads to the tragedy, that there's a sense of inevitability in the flaw of the character, but it's also linked usually to the willfulness of a character. So for Macbeth, it is his ambition. For Romeo, it is his desire to pursue Juliet, to see that love is entirely worthwhile. Romeo stating he wishes to shake the stars also brings in dramatic irony for the audience and may let a sad knowing part of the audience, as he tries to escape the fate he is sealed to. And again, there's some useful techniques being analysed inside here. During the play as a whole, however, the audience may see a different view of the love between Romeo and Juliet. They may see it as it begins to become erratic and crazy. At the beginning of the play, many audience may find it interesting how love can brew between two opposing families. Yet as the play progresses and Juliet goes against her father and family, and she deliberates whether not to drink the poison, the audiences begin to see the madness of this love and how it has afflicted Juliet. So the useful contrast here is between how the love is beautiful and how it is actually affecting them in a negative fashion. And I think any reference of the love between Romeo and Juliet needs to talk about how, on the one hand, it is predetermined, but on the other hand, it's down to their will and their actions. And there's a tension here. We see now an attempt to build up the analysis of the love. And this is done here with some analysis of stagecraft, where the actor could be expressing these lines with some excessive emotion. The repetition here is linked to the structure of the climax of the soliloquy, and we're looking to combine audience reaction with acting choices. I would really spend some time focused on this and suggest different ways in which this repetition could be built up. It could be done with confidence and a resolute manner, or it could be done with speed and stumbling and demonstrating an erratic response instead. As with before, the student is able to present a contrasting variable, and it shows the love as healing and joyous. And this is very good what the student has done here, that they have chosen conceptual adjectives, that the love is healing and joyous. Even better than this, although perhaps not useful for this particular sentence, is to present two adjectives that might need some hedging. So healing yet happy, or happy if constructive. Now those aren't true hedges, something that could be happy and constructive nevertheless. So joyous yet destructive, or joyous yet rebellious might be more effective hedging. We can see some wider play analysis here from the ancient grudge, again indicating the phrase, then connoting one word from it. And in this contrast that's described later on, some knowledge of Petrarchan love here would be useful. What characterizes Petrarchan love is that it is written from the man's point of view, and it is often, throughout most of the poem, unrequited. And the poem focuses on the pain of the lover and how they place the beloved on a pedestal, rather as someone who approaches them with equal passion. The final paragraph attempts to focus on audience and context. And what's very useful here is the reference to patriarchal society, and demonstrating that whilst Romeo has these reflective and emotional aspects which could be seen as feminine, internal, and Petrarchan, Lord Capulet instead is pressured to continue the bloodline and fulfill the roles and expectations demanded by a patriarchal society. That this is mentioned and referred to in a Year 9 essay is useful. And again, the way we really understand context is by thinking about it in terms of audience response. And look elsewhere on my website for a video about audience and context. You can look at the context of the Elizabethan audience, who would perhaps see Juliet as being willful and indulgent in her love and her rebellion against her father. And then you could compare that to a contemporary audience where we expect to marry almost entire strangers at some point, therefore truly undermining Capulet's desire to marry his daughter in a socially constructed fashion.